I have a couple readings tonight. I wanted to open with just a passage that I found in Lumpalium book called Dewdrop. It's apparently a introductory Dhamma poem. Born as a human, what a wonderful gift. More wise and intelligent than other beings, I urge you all to consider this well. With the spirit of Dhamma guiding your lives, learn to see everything as your teacher. Whether a log or a person, look for meaning. You'll always find wisdom, and therein a teaching. The poison of impermanence is found everywhere. Come now, look for life's natural truths. You're born, then nothing but old age can follow. You can't escape sickness of the body and mind. How can you solve this so suffering ends? Bodily illness has doctors and pills. If you're in luck, your condition improves, but anguish of the mind may pervade till you die. The only cure is the medicine of the truth. So Debbie was kind enough to lend me a book that we don't currently have here other than in her possession. It's called The Contemplative's Companion. It's a collection of teachings that Lumpal Dhammo gave during COVID. And the first teaching is called Empathetic Distress. He mentions his mother in this teaching, and I'm sure, as many of you know, that he was a caregiver for his mother and was really, really inspiring to many of us, and just the strength and power and I guess the bravery he took to make that choice as a monastic. So you hear it mentioned in here. Empathetic distress. How to cope is a question and answer. So the question is how to cope with and prevent empathetic distress when the lives of so many people in the world are in turmoil and nature is under stress. I know 2 doctors who worked in an emergency department for the last 20 years. They really thrived in those situations. You need a certain kind of skill and gift to be on the front lines. A nurse who worked in the COVID-19 treatment wards once told me that his stress partially came from wearing the personal protective equipment. He used to work 8 or 9-hour shifts. He was sweating all the time under his PPE, and it was hard for him to breathe. He said it was absolutely exhausting. His stress was situational and related to work. Hopefully there are professionals who can help people deal with those situations. The distress people feel in witnessing suffering is slightly different. You're not only on the front lines or in physically stressful situation, but you're feeling empathetic distress because you're experiencing the suffering of others. Now, why is that a problem? Let's say a close family member starts to engage in self-destructive activities. They're not interested in your views or listening to you. You have empathy for them, obviously, but it's very hard to be at peace with that situation because you don't want them to suffer. The stress, I think, is from wanting, not because of empathy. I don't think empathy is stressful. It's the wanting of people not to suffer that seems to be the stressful part. I experienced that with my mom. The empathy was always beautiful, but not wanting her to have pain was stressful and reactive. I did as much as I could, but she had to bear her own suffering. The Buddha said, you pick up your own karma and you work with it. You can't work through someone else's karma. Empathy doesn't imply, I must fix this, or I don't want this to happen, and I wish the world wasn't like this. That attitude is stressful because it's coming from wanting. It also doesn't mean that you don't act when you can. Empathy is an active force in our hearts and will act when it can. Stress arises in situations where you're unable to fulfill your empathetic inclinations. Media overload can cause this. If you're watching terrible news about refugees crossing the Mediterranean Sea, racial discrimination in Sudan, or violence against women all day long, then you not only feel, oh, these poor people, but also it shouldn't be this way. You're going to get more distressed, but unable to do anything. It's not that we can't engage in social issues. If the local school board is doing something that's going to affect your children, then certainly you can or will talk to the teachers. There's a kind of voyeurism in our society. We witness the stress of others, get appalled and shocked, and then witness it again. How is that helpful? So step back and judge how useful is worry over issues that you have no control over. There's this natural desire to not have your loved ones suffer. Notice how this desire causes suffering. The Buddha spoke of upekkha, peaceful coexistence with the way things are, as one of the Brahmaviharas. Just to remind you, there are 4 Brahmaviharas: metta, a sense of goodwill to all beings; karuna, a sense of compassion to all beings. Karuna is that which activates action and sees the suffering of others. Burnout is called the far enemy of compassion, and the near enemy is indifference, bordering upon cruelty. Mudita is the appreciation of beauty and joy. Upekkha, as mentioned earlier, is the peaceful coexistence with the way things are. It is sometimes translated as equanimity. Upekkha is always at peace because the heart is open. So if the heart is open but stressed, then one has to contemplate, what does it mean to be at peace with the way things are? I learned this the hard way as a young monk at Chithurst Monastery. I used to get stressed out because I thought I had to fix the problems people came to talk to me about. The empathy was there, but I was doing the wrong thing. Their problems weren't mine. This didn't mean I didn't do everything I could, but I used to take it back to my kuti and distress myself. It seemed like a good idea, but it wasn't, because it was not constructive. Lumpur Sumedho helped me. I began to see that I can fully be empathetic, do the best that I can, and not worry. It's not indifference. It's knowing the world is this way. There is injustice and cruelty, and there are refugees, and I'm doing the best I can. It's challenging to be at peace when loved ones are suffering. For instance, a grandmother thinks the way her child is raising their child may lead to bad results. That's very stressful because you don't want the innocent little one to get hurt, but the grandmother has no power, no possibility to change the situation, which is very painful. You have to go to the pain and understand life is like this. Quite often, the movement towards peaceful coexistence with the way things are is the ability to feel heart-crushing pain. My mother was in a lot of pain despite taking painkillers. She tried to be cheerful so I wouldn't suffer. I tried not to worry her so she wouldn't worry. 2 loving people trying to deal with a human situation. I contemplated the situation. I reflected, what is the problem here? You're doing everything you can, and your mom's not complaining. She's a brave woman. What's the problem? Well, I don't want her to suffer, obviously. Yeah, but she has to suffer. This is her body. This is her karma that she has to go through. And again, she isn't complaining, and everything was being done. That was a good insight into what equanimity means when the heart is open. I was a better caregiver after that. My mom realized she need not hold back her concern about pain, her fear of upsetting me. Things improved, and she was less tired. That was an easy situation when compared to some of the experiences people share with me, such as their children addicted to drugs. Those are tough. What can you do? You can't force or will change. I think you first have to look at the wanting of it to be different than it is. Ask yourself, what do I want that I don't have? And what do I have that I don't want? Return to the 4 Noble Truths. The cause of suffering is attachment to desire. Obviously, you want your loved ones to be free from suffering, but their suffering is not the cause of your suffering. It's the existential holding of a hope that is hopeless. I'm going to repeat that. It's the existential holding of a hope that is hopeless. If you can go right to the pain of wanting, then it is possible to come to a peaceful coexistence with the way things are. The process may be painful, and you may cry, but by opening and embracing that reality, you can come to a peaceful coexistence with the way things are. Protecting the mind. Be careful with large-scale issues affecting the world where you have no control. Monks are asked to seriously consider Indriya Samvara, the restraint of the senses. Take in only as much as you need of political arguments, socio-cultural issues, and environmental problems. Do what you can and guard the mind from too much stimulation of horrible things. This isn't Pollyannish. It's not about always having an attitude, oh, how lovely the world is. It's important to protect the mind. None of us are cold or indifferent. People who do retreats are compassionate and caring, but sometimes there can be an overcarrying of issues and people which can lead to suffering. Also, If you have access to beauty, participate in it. It has an important effect on our minds. It is vital to appreciate beauty, and not just to engage in horror, but also to contemplate on how you can get attached to beauty. For instance, I could get attached to this beautiful monastery. When I have to go into the city, I can create our mind perceptions of, oh, it's so polluted and terrible, but that's something I'm creating. Rather, I could use beauty of the blue sky, the green grass, or the sounds of birds to uplift my mind and come to a sense of joy. Joy is an aspect of the open heart and also is empathetic. So you can see that within the whole of experience, or the picture, life is like this. Buddha's take on suffering is interesting. As the story goes, he went into a village where he saw sickness and death for the first time. The suffering didn't impel him towards compassionate distress, rather a spiritual search. He wondered if there was a dimension that wasn't subject to old age, sickness, and death. In that allegorical tale, the Buddha encounters 4 heavenly messengers: an old person, a sick person, a corpse, and a sadhu. He asked the charioteer Channa about the sadhu. Channa says the sadhu is seeking the deathless and the unconditioned. That became the Buddha's search and gift of the Dhamma, a contemplative's way to go beyond old age, sickness, and death, the way of the deathless for all sentient beings. You can see the effect of one being like the Buddha had on so many cultures over 2,600 years. It's visible in monasteries around the world and through beings like His Holiness the Dalai Lama. This aspiration for the deathless is not weak or ineffective, and it takes a lot of strength. So, do another reading here real quick. This is called Dhammavichaya versus conventional thinking. Conventional thinking could be mulling over one of the teachings by the Buddha, wondering what it means. You're a speculative intellectual mode. Dhammavichaya, investigation of mental state, is one of the 7 factors of enlightenment. It is the inquisitive part of our contemplative life, where we can inquire about some aspect of the Dhamma, but always in relationship to our own experience. That's important. You don't regard the Dhamma as a thought structure that you think you understand or is unconnected to real life in real time. If I say something abstract that you can't see in your own life, then it's not a truth that edifies you. You may or may not believe it or find it interesting, but it doesn't really edify until it clicks with your experience. How to use Dhammavichaya. Stimulated by a suggestion from a teacher or teachings, you observe and explore the world or phrase. If a teacher is talking about resistance, you can explore, what do they mean by resistance? You could simply say the word or the phrase that's caught your attention and quietly notice how it resonates with you. It's a quiet observation. You're not just thinking about it. It's a way of focusing quiet attention on some aspects of your Dhammic experience. The classic contemplation would be, why do I suffer? You could analyze it. I suffer because X, Y, and Z, but that wouldn't be the same as experiencing what is suffering in real time and in real life. The question itself makes you conscious of the problem at hand. Then you start to watch, and maybe you get some insight. That insight comes from silent attention. I would encourage all of us to think less because we easily go into doubting and thinking, doubting and thinking, doubting and thinking. This cycle is common where you ask yourself a question and then answer intellectually. Because the problem is that you keep asking yourself questions. You create a question which isn't necessarily about your existential experience. It could just be, I wonder what that means. I wonder how rebirth really works. Then you think about it. You'll create doubt and you'll think. Because you've all been encouraged to believe answers are the solution. The mind can easily go from doubt to answer, but it's just caught up in a loop of thinking. It's not Dhammavichaya. It's thinking, plain and simple, so be careful of that. Often people ask intelligent questions, but they're always driven by a habit of doubt. They're not able to see that doubt is a type of mindset. Once you know it is a mindset, you're fine. You don't have to go to thought. That's an important realization because you tend not to be able to get out of thinking realm. You give too much credit to thinking. Sorry, this is not a dismissal of thinking. In the ordinary world, if something is not working, you try to find a solution. You need to think to do that. But spiritually, beginning to incline towards the silence of the mind is the most skillful thing to do, knowing stillness. Language can help you tune into that stillness. If I describe breath meditation as mindfulness of the breath, I tend to emphasize the breath, whereas with still knowing with breathing, emphasizing the still knowing. It's a different way of tuning in for me. Maybe this way of using words doesn't make a difference for you, but it does for me. That's how I like to train myself. If I can cultivate still knowing all the way to the end of the out-breath, then I could try to use that in a more complex situations, like annoyance. You're usually going to thought when you're annoyed. Why don't they stop doing that? Or I shouldn't be like this. Instead of thinking, how about still knowing? You've tried it with the breath, so why not use it with an emotion? Annoyance is not still, it's vibratory. It creates pressure and tension in the body. But the knowing, what's that? Where's the knowing within a negative experience? You could do this kind of practice with death, still knowing with the body falling apart, sickness or beauty. Beauty is very good to use. The stillness is obvious when you're looking at nature, like a vast blue sky or a lake. The sky and the lake are pointing to the stillness rather than us needing nature to experience stillness. Where could that still knowing come in, the contracted, more in-your-face parts of our lives? Obviously, that's more difficult. Still knowing would be an interesting exercise to practice at the dinner table or while waiting for a bus or shopping. Now, this doesn't mean that you're becoming catatonic. You're continuing to function, but now you're working from a place of awareness. The emphasis is always on the knowing. If you get conversant with and do it a lot, then that practice is 24/7. It's not restricted to the object of meditation. The object hopefully facilitates that. The language of awareness with rather than of has been useful for me. When negativity comes up, we're trying to think it through. We get glued into negativity and don't let go. We think we must fix, understand, or analyze it. While that can be tremendously important, if there are issues of repression, sometimes we can get attached to that kind of mood out of good intentions. A more skillful option would be to determine, I'm going to practice knowing, say, horribleness. That takes a lot of space. It might seem like you can't do it, but you actually can if you play around. Most of us understand our neuroses so that there's no real need to analyze them. Our culture sometimes over-psychologizes things. While Western psychology is fantastic, it has created a need in most of us to always figure stuff out or analyze it. That means we're constantly engaged with the objectives and objects, and it's not the object and it's not the objectless. Some people think that letting go is a form of repression. You have to express it by punching the pillow or something like that. You don't have to do that. You don't have to follow the thoughts. It depends on what you trust. I trust in awareness, working things out. Okay, and then I just have one last reading. So this is from the Therigatha. If you've read the suttas at all, which most of us in the room have, you'll find that Mahakassapa can be pretty intense. And I've read this poem just kind of in context to some of these readings because Mahakassapa is really moved by the beauty of nature in this poem. And it's just really, it's lovely because normally you read about him like, going after Ananda or something like that. So this is a little different. Where some are exhausted, climbing the mountain, there the awakened ones err, mindful, alert, buoyed by his psychic power, Kassapa climbs. Returning from his alms round, climbing the peak, Kassapa does jhana, with no clinging, having abandoned terror and fear. Returning from his alms round, climbing the peak, Kassapa does jhana, with no clinging, unbound among those who burn. Returning from alms round, climbing the peak, Kassapa does jhana, with no clinging, effluent free, his task done. Spread with garlands of vines, places delighting the mind, resounding with elephants appealing, these rocky crags refresh me. The color of blue dark clouds glistening, cooled with the waters of clear flowing streams, covered with ladybugs, those rocky crags refresh me. Like the peaks of blue dark clouds, like excellent peaked roof buildings, resounding with tuskers appealing, those rocky crags refresh me. Their lovely surfaces, wet with rain, mountains frequented by seers and equity with peacocks. These rocky crags refresh me. This is enough for me, desiring to do jhana, resolute, mindful, enough for me, desiring the goal, resolute, a monk, enough for me, desiring comfort, resolute, trained, enough for me, desiring my duty, resolute, such. Flax flower blue, like the sky covered over with clouds, filled with flocks of various birds. Those rocky crags refresh me. Uncrowded by householders, frequented by herds of deer, filled with flocks of various birds. Those rocky crags refresh me. With clear waters, massive boulders, frequented by monkeys and deer, covered with moss, water, and weeds. Those rocky crags refresh me. There is no such pleasure for me in the music of a 5-piece band, and there is when my mind is at one, seeing the Dhamma